At my retirement
I can't do
party,
this
after
anymore.
28 years of dedicated service, my husband stood up and announced he was leaving me for his personal trainer. Margaret has let herself go, he told a room full of my colleagues and friends. I deserve someone who still takes care of herself. She needs to move out of our house by next week. What he didn't know was that the house, the beach cottage, and our entire retirement fund were all in my name. I calmly took the microphone from his trembling hand and said something that wiped the smug smile right off his face. It all started 3 weeks before my retirement party, when I woke up at 2 a.m. to whispers coming from the hallway. My husband, Richard, was on the phone with someone, his voice low but excited. I lay perfectly still, straining to hear. "Everything is set, Mom," he was saying. "The party is the perfect opportunity. She won't see it coming." My heart started pounding. What were they planning? And why was my mother-in-law involved? The floorboards creaked as Richard came back to bed. I closed my eyes, pretending to be asleep. He slipped under the covers, but I could feel the tension in his body. He wasn't relaxed at all. The next morning, Richard was unusually cheerful. "Good morning, sweetheart," he said, kissing my cheek. He smelled of expensive cologne he never wore. "I was thinking we should make your retirement party extra special. You've earned it after 28 years. I raised an eyebrow. In all our years of marriage, Richard had never shown enthusiasm for any celebration. He always complained about the cost, the hassle, the time wasted. Now he wanted to make things special? "That's thoughtful of you," I replied carefully, watching him rush to get ready for his morning workout. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen showed a notification. "Call Kay at noon." "Who's Kay?" I asked casually while watering the orchids by the window. Richard froze for just a second. I saw something flash in his eyes. Fear? Guilt? "Oh, that's Kevin from the gym," he said quickly. "We're planning a racquetball match." A lie. I knew my husband. When he lied, his right ear turned slightly red. It was doing exactly that now. After he left, I stood by the window of our home in Brookline, looking out at the gray November sky over Boston. 28 years. I had given this man nearly 3 decades of my life. We met when I was a young financial analyst at Morrison & Associates. He was a mid-level sales manager with big dreams. We married for love, built a life together, raised no children because nature had other plans for us. Richard took it hard, especially when his mother, Eleanor, started making comments about how a real wife would have given her grandchildren. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Speaking of the devil, there stood Eleanor Whitmore, my mother-in-law, with her signature tight-lipped smile. "Margaret, dear," she said, walking in without waiting for an invitation. "How are we doing? Getting ready for the big retirement?" Eleanor had always treated me with cold politeness. In 28 years, she never once called me her daughter. I was always Richard's wife, or just Margaret. "Coming along," I answered, leading her to the living room. "Good, good." She looked around the room with that appraising look she always had, silently comparing everything to her own home in Newton. "You know, Margaret, I've been thinking. Richard is getting older. He's 65 now. Have you two discussed what happens to everything when you're gone?" I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" "Well, the house, the beach cottage on Cape Cod, your retirement accounts. Wouldn't it be wise to make sure everything is properly documented? For the family's sake?" "What family, Eleanor? We don't have children." "Oh, but I have 2 nephews. Lovely boys. They're practically Richard's brothers. It would be a shame if everything went to the government, don't you think?" I set my teacup down slowly. "And why are you bringing this up now?" "Just thinking ahead, dear. By the way, where do you keep your important papers? The property deeds, account information?" I stared at her. After decades of barely concealed contempt, suddenly she was interested in my financial documents. "Everything is with my lawyer," I said firmly. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, no reason. Just curious." She smiled that cold smile again. "Well, I must be going. Lots to do before your big party." After she left, I sat in silence, connecting the dots. The late-night phone call, Richard's sudden enthusiasm, Eleanor's questions about property and documents. Something was very wrong. I went to Richard's home office and tried to log into his computer, The password wasn't our anniversary date like it used to be. It wasn't his birthday either. On a hunch, I tried March 15th, the date he started his gym membership 3 years ago. It worked. What I found made my stomach turn. His browser history was filled with searches from the past month. How to divorce after 60. Spousal rights to retirement accounts in Massachusetts. Can wife keep house in divorce if husband's name is on it? My hands trembled as I scrolled through page after page. How to minimize alimony payments. Divorce strategies for protecting assets. Then my phone rang. It was my friend Barbara. Margaret, I'm sorry to call with this, but I thought you should know. I saw Richard yesterday at the jewelry store in Copley Place. He was with a young woman, very young, maybe 30. They were looking at necklaces, and she was hanging all over him like they were newlyweds. What did she look like? I whispered. Blonde, athletic build, wearing yoga pants and an expensive jacket. Pretty, but in that obvious way, you know? And Richard was calling her babe. I'm so sorry, Margaret. Thank you for telling me, Barbara. I hung up and stared at the wall. 28 years. And this was how it ended. That evening, Richard came home with flowers and chocolates. For my beautiful wife, he said, kissing me. Beautiful. He hadn't called me beautiful in years. Richard, we need to talk about our future plans, I said, watching his reaction carefully. He tensed, just slightly, but I caught it. Talk about what? Everything's fine. Let's just focus on your retirement party. We'll discuss serious stuff after that, okay? After the party. That's when the bomb would drop. Okay, I said, forcing a smile. Whatever you say. That night, when Richard was in the shower, I looked through his phone. The passcode was the same as his computer. What I found confirmed everything. There were hundreds of texts to someone named Christina Babe. Baby, soon we'll be together. After her party, I'm done with her. You promised me the beach house, Richie. I can't wait to wake up to the ocean every day. Mom's lawyer says if we do this right, she'll only get half of everything. The house and cottage will be mine. I love you, Richie. Can't wait until that old woman is out of our lives. Old woman. I was 62, still working, still active, still contributing, and to them, I was just an obstacle to remove. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to my own phone. Then, I put his phone back exactly where I found it. I needed help. I called Janet Morrison, my former colleague who is now a family law attorney. Janet, it's Margaret Chen. Can we meet tomorrow? I need legal advice. Of course, Margaret. Come by at lunch. I'll clear my schedule. Janet's office was downtown in a glass tower overlooking the harbor. She hugged me warmly, then noticed my expression. Sit down. What's going on? I told her everything. The phone calls, the texts, the searches, Eleanor's questions, all of it. Janet listened carefully, taking notes. Okay, she said when I finished. This is bad, but you're not helpless. Let's talk about assets. The house in Brookline, when did you buy it? $1,998. But here's the thing. My parents gave me the down payment, $100,000, and the deed was originally in my name only. We added Richard 2 years later. Janet's eyes lit up. Do you have documentation of that gift? My mother kept everything. When she passed, I got all her records, the bank transfer, a letter stating it was a gift specifically to me. That could be huge. What about the beach cottage? That was my grandmother's. She left it to me in her will 15 years ago. Richard's name was never on it. Even better. And your retirement accounts? All from my job. Richard was self-employed for most of our marriage. He doesn't have much saved. Janet smiled. Margaret, your husband made a classic mistake. He assumed that because he's been living in these properties, he owns them. But legally, the situation is very different. Let me do some research, but I think you're in a much stronger position than they realize. I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt in days. Hope, but there was more. When I got home, there was a letter waiting for me from a law firm in San Francisco. I almost threw it away, thinking it was junk mail. Then I saw the name, Morrison and Grant, Attorneys at Law, Estate Division. I opened it with trembling hands. Dear Mrs. Margaret Chen, we regret to inform you of the passing of Mr. Thomas Morrison, your former employer and mentor. As per his final wishes, you have been named as a beneficiary of his estate. My heart stopped. Tom Morrison, the founder of Morrison and Associates, the man who hired me fresh out of college and taught me everything about finance. He had no children, no wife. He always said I was like the daughter he never had. The letter continued. Mr. Morrison has bequeathed to you the following. His investment portfolio consisting of technology stocks purchased in 1995, currently valued at approximately $2.4 million. His vacation property in Key West, Florida, valued at approximately $890,000, the sum of $200,000 in cash. I had to read it 3 times to believe it. Tom had left me nearly $3.5 million. He must have made these tech investments in the early days of the internet boom and held on to them. I sat down, my mind racing. Richard didn't know about this. Nobody did. The letter had just arrived today. I called the law firm and confirmed everything was real. They needed me to sign some documents, but the inheritance was mine. According to Massachusetts law, inheritance received during marriage is separate property, not subject to division. I now had a beach cottage worth $600,000, a house in Brookline worth $1.2 million, my own retirement accounts totaling $800,000, and now this windfall of $3.5 million. I was wealthy, independent, free, but I decided not to tell Richard. Not yet. I wanted to see exactly how far he would go with his scheme. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in deception on both sides. Richard grew more affectionate by the day, complimenting me, bringing me gifts, telling me how much he appreciated me, all while texting his mistress and planning my downfall. His mother came by twice more, each time asking subtle questions about our finances. Where did I keep important documents? Had I updated my will lately? Did Richard know all our account numbers? I played along perfectly. Oh, Eleanor, I'm so glad you're thinking about these things. You're right, we should be more organized. Meanwhile, I was moving money, documenting everything, preparing my counterattack. One afternoon, I went to the Seaport Hotel where my company was hosting the retirement party. I wanted to check on the arrangements, and there, in the lobby, I saw her, Christina, the mistress. She was on her phone, laughing. Richie, baby, this place is gorgeous. You said after your speech she'll understand it's over, right? And then the beach cottage is ours? I watched her for a moment. She was beautiful in that obvious way Barbara had described. Blonde hair, tight body, expensive athleisure wear, about 30 years old. She had the look of someone who was used to getting what she wanted. She turned and caught me staring. Can I help you? She asked with barely concealed contempt. I'm looking for the event manager, I said sweetly. I'm hosting a party here next week. Good for you, she said dismissively, and walked away, still giggling into her phone about beach houses and new beginnings. That night, I overheard Richard rehearsing in his study. Dear friends and colleagues, we're here to celebrate Margaret's retirement. But I have to be honest with you all. Our marriage has run its course. Margaret has become a different person. She's let herself go. She's not the woman I married, and I've decided it's time for us to part ways. I stood outside the door, my blood boiling. He was going to humiliate me in front of everyone I'd worked with for 28 years. He was going to announce our divorce at my retirement party. But what he didn't know was that I had my own speech prepared. The night of the party arrived. The hotel ballroom was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, 200 guests from my company, our social circle, family. Everyone was there. Richard looked nervous but excited. His mother sat at the head table, a satisfied smile on her face. In the back corner, I spotted a man in a dark suit I didn't recognize. I later learned he was their divorce lawyer, ready to present papers the moment Richard finished his speech. And there, introduced as a friend from the gym, was Christina, in a stunning red dress that probably cost more than my first car. Margaret, you look wonderful tonight, my boss, David, said as he shook my hand. 28 years. You've been the backbone of this company. What are you going to do with yourself now? Oh, David, I smiled. I think I'm going to surprise everyone. The dinner was lovely. Speeches were made about my contributions, my dedication, my impact on the company. I accepted them gracefully, all while watching Richard check his notes obsessively. Finally, the MC announced, "And now, Margaret's husband Richard would like to say a few words." Richard stood up, straightened his tie, and took the microphone. "Thank you all for being here tonight. 28 years is a long time, and I want to be honest with everyone here about what those years have meant." The room grew quiet. Margaret and I met when we were young, full of dreams. But people change. Life changes us. And sometimes you have to have the courage to admit when something isn't working anymore. I saw my colleagues exchange confused glances. The truth is, Margaret has changed. She's not the woman I married. She's become complacent, boring, uninterested in taking care of herself or our relationship. And I've made a decision. Someone gasped. Richard continued, growing bolder. "I'm filing for divorce. Margaret needs to understand that she can't coast through life anymore. I deserve to be happy. I deserve someone who appreciates me." He looked directly at Christina, who was practically glowing with anticipation. "Furthermore," he continued, "I expect a fair division of our assets. The house, the beach cottage, everything we've built together." The room erupted in whispers. People were shocked, appalled, confused. Eleanor nodded approvingly. The lawyer in the corner straightened his papers. Richard set down the microphone and looked at me with something like triumph. He expected tears. He expected me to run out in shame. Instead, I stood up calmly and picked up the microphone. "Thank you, Richard. That was certainly honest. And since we're being honest tonight, I'd like to share a few truths of my own." The room fell silent. This wasn't in his script. "First, I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate my retirement. 28 years at Morrison & Associates has been the joy of my life. But Richard is right about one thing. Tonight is about truth." I pulled a folder from my purse. The truth is, I've known about Richard's plan for 3 weeks. I've known about his girlfriend Christina, who's sitting right there in the red dress. I've known about the lawyer he hired, who's in the corner pretending to be a guest. And I've known about his mother Eleanor's involvement in every step of this scheme. Richard's face went pale. Eleanor gripped the table. But here's where things get interesting. Richard mentioned our assets. The house, the beach cottage. He assumed they were ours. They're not. I held up a document. The house in Brookline was purchased with a $100,000 gift from my parents to me specifically. It was in my name only for 2 years before Richard was added. Under Massachusetts law, that portion remains my separate property. Richard took a step back. The beach cottage on Cape Cod? That was my grandmother's. She left it to me in her will. Richard's name has never been on it. It's entirely mine. The lawyer in the corner was frantically making notes. And my retirement accounts? All from my salary at Morrison & Associates. Richard was self-employed and never contributed to any joint accounts. I turned to face him directly. "So Richard, tell me, what exactly do you think you're entitled to?" The room was absolutely silent. But I wasn't finished. There's more. 3 weeks ago, I received a letter from Tom Morrison's estate. Most of you remember Tom, our founder, my mentor. He passed away last month and left me his investment portfolio, his property in Florida, and a cash sum. The total value is approximately $3.5 million. The gasps were audible now. And since we're being completely transparent, I should mention that I know about the $25,000 Richard borrowed from our joint savings to buy jewelry for his girlfriend. I know about the $15,000 he transferred to his mother to pay the divorce lawyer. And I know that he promised Christina a beach house that was never his to give. Christina stood up abruptly. "Richie, what is she talking about? You said you owned everything." "Shut up," Richard hissed. "No, I won't shut up. You promised me a new life. You said she was nothing. You said the beach house would be ours." I said, "Shut up!" But Christina was hysterical now. He also told me he'd been paying for everything our whole relationship. Every dinner, every gift, every weekend getaway. With her money, he said she didn't even know. The room buzzed with outrage. I turned to my colleagues. "I apologize for the drama tonight, but I thought you all deserved to see who my husband really is. And I want you to know that I will be just fine." I set down the microphone and walked toward the exit. Behind me, chaos erupted. "Richard, you complete bastard," I heard someone shout. "How could you do this?" another voice demanded. David, my boss, approached Richard. I don't know how you thought this was appropriate, but I do know that Margaret is worth 10 of you. And if you ever come near this company or any of its events again, I will personally make sure everyone in Boston business circles knows exactly what you tried to do tonight. Eleanor was arguing with the lawyer, who was trying to leave. You told us this would work. You said she'd have no choice but to sign. The lawyer shook his head. You didn't tell me about the property documentation, or the inheritance. This changes everything. I stepped outside into the cool Boston night and took a deep breath. Behind me, through the windows, I could see the chaos continuing. Richard looked 10 years older, standing in the middle of the room while people berated him from all sides. Christina had stormed out another exit. The lawyer had disappeared. Eleanor was crying into a napkin. My phone buzzed. It was Janet. Margaret, how did it go? Better than expected. I think they're in shock. Good. Come by tomorrow. We'll finalize the divorce paperwork. Based on what you've told me, this should be straightforward. He gets nothing. Thank you, Janet. For everything. I hung up and looked back at the hotel one more time. 28 years of my life were ending in that room. But it felt less like an ending and more like a beginning. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Richard got nothing. No house, no beach cottage, no portion of my retirement or inheritance. Just half the value of his car and whatever was left in his personal checking account, which wasn't much after he'd spent everything on Christina. The aftermath was brutal for him. The video from that night went viral. Someone had recorded the entire exchange and posted it with the hashtag number Retirement Revenge. It had over 2 million views within a week. David made good on his promise. Richard's reputation in Boston business circles was destroyed. No one wanted to work with the man who tried to publicly humiliate his wife at her retirement party. He ended up working as a sales representative for a small insurance company in Worcester, living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment. Eleanor lost her savings paying the lawyer fees for a case that went nowhere. She had to sell her house in Newton and move into a senior apartment complex. Every time I saw her at the grocery store, she looked away in shame. Christina moved on quickly, as I knew she would. Within 6 months, she was engaged to a wealthy real estate developer 20 years older than her. Her Instagram was full of pictures from their engagement party in the Hamptons. Richard apparently saw those photos. According to mutual friends, he didn't take it well. As for me, I moved into my grandmother's beach cottage on Cape Cod. Every morning, I wake up to the sound of waves and the smell of salt air. I used part of my inheritance to start a small foundation supporting young women in finance, in Tom Morrison's memory. Last month, I received a letter from Richard. It arrived at my old address and was forwarded by the new owners. Margaret, I don't know if you'll read this. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not because I want anything from you. I don't deserve anything. I wanted to say that I understand now what I lost. You were the best thing in my life, and I was too stupid and greedy to see it. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. Richard. I read the letter once and filed it away in a drawer. I didn't respond.